this is actually a topic that is becoming mainstream.
They've got a lot more knowledge about this than they're letting on. And there's clearly a whole lot being left unsaid when it comes to all this.
All right, everybody, the UFO files have dropped, but what do they show? And are we any closer to getting disclosure? I have with me Darcy Weir and Rob Flis. Darcy is a filmmaker, and he also has his own podcast called UFO Review. And with me, I have Rob Flis, who has a podcast called Unveiled through Watch Mojo. Guys, thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
So what are you guys thinking with these files that just dropped? We had 2 releases now. There's supposedly more coming on the way. What are your thoughts on these files? And do you think we're getting anywhere closer to disclosure with this?
Darcy, you can take it away first.
I would say that the files are a bit of a mixed bag. Like, obviously, it's cool to see that the actual presidential administration is behind a UAP UFO release. So I think that the UAP file release 2, like 1 and 2, are beneficial to the overall disclosure movement, because this is actually a topic that is becoming mainstream, right? Like, politicians are discussing this at an astounding rate now. It's all over the news. It used to be kind of like a segment that was either a joke or, just kind of a X-Files-ish one-off that news networks would cover, UFO events or UFO stories. And now it seems that, Bill Maher's covering it, CBS, NBC, Fox, CNN. And people are skeptical. Right. I'll say that there's definitely some things that I'm worried about in regards to why they would be included in the files. Some things for sure look like a flock of birds or a single bird to me in FLIR. But there are other videos that are prevalent enough in that release that seem legit, seem like something anomalous. The last greatest UAP files release was 2017, right? That's when we really got the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, the Gimbal UAP videos, and people can argue all day with Mick West about those, but now we've got tranches of similar quality videos recorded in really high quality FLIR from assets like Reaper drones or, F-18s. So it all looks legit when it comes from those kind of sources. The only reason I say that is because, the FLIR systems are no joke. Like, they're meant to track enemies, contraband, all kinds of things that are a national security threat, but they're picking up UFOs that sometimes are not seen in the human visual spectrum, and therefore they're anomalous.
Right. Rob, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Darcy on that for the most part. It's cool to see the administration making good on their promise to release stuff. We've been hearing promises about this for a while now, and so it's good to see them finally coming to light. And I also agree that it's great just to have more public discourse about it, although part of me is also surprised that there isn't more mainstream attention put on this, because, yeah, it is getting a little bit, but, I'm not hearing my family or my colleagues necessarily talk about this stuff. When we gather, you'd figure something like this would be more prevalently discussed. Maybe that's just me because I'm so into this stuff, but it is being heavily talked about within the community itself and discussed. And I'm not sure if the ball is really moving forward because, as Darcy said, there's a lot of skeptics out there, and I don't think the quality of these videos is really moving the needle one way or the other or changing anybody's opinion. I feel like believers are still believers and skeptics are still skeptics. There is no smoking gun evidence that everybody, is probably waiting for.
Right.
And yeah, it doesn't seem, we got those New York Times videos in 2017. That's almost 10 years ago. And so I'm not sure that these new releases are really a step up in terms of, level of believability or whatever information that is provided that can kind of like give us any conclusions. So it doesn't really feel like we're moving forward at a rapid pace. It's more like maybe a half step or something like that, in my opinion.
Right. I agree. And the thing is, it's interesting because, this is the most amount of transparency we've had on this subject in like forever. Like we're now, all these documents that have been kind of locked up are finally getting pushed out to the public. But like you said, it doesn't feel like we're gaining any ground really. And that's because the general population still isn't paying attention. Even though all these files are out there, nobody's talking about it. And I've like talked to friends that don't really know this subject well. And I'm just, hey, did you see there were like these UFO files released? And like, what, really? And like, they're all like surprised by it. And it's disclosure is not going to happen, in my opinion, until the general population actually starts paying attention to it and asking questions. And we can't seem to get past that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I just feel like there needs to be something released that really gets people talking. Like I mentioned, that's type of smoking gun evidence that's really hard to refute. That kind of indisputable proof, which we don't have because there's an argument against everything that's been released so far, and stuff that looks really cool on the surface, like that that star video from the first batch of documents that was released, which at first glance looks awesome, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then immediately people are coming out, oh, that's a flare attached to a parachute, and it's it's very easy to see it as that.
Right.
So yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah, the other thing about it is with all these videos, and some of it is going to just be birds or balloons, like Darcy was saying. But I know Tim Burchett mentioned recently in an interview, he said that he suspects there to be disinformation sprinkled in with all of this. And I don't know if that includes these balloon videos or bird videos or like intentionally manipulated documents. Do you think that would go down that path, guys?
It's not hard for me to believe that, there is probably some disinformation sprinkled in there just to slow the process. I really feel like this is a drip feed, and I don't know who's selecting these videos that get released, but I feel like there is likely some plan in place, and that this is just part of the process that they're choosing to follow to not make it kind of like a landslide thing, like a very gradual, slow process. So to me, that's probably the most likely explanation for it.
Right. And do you think it's actually going to end up culminating into some form of half disclosure, or because I don't think we're going to get full disclosure. I think we're going to get some form of it maybe, and it's going to be whatever narrative they want to spin on it, but I don't know.
I feel like for a lot of us, and I've heard this from guests on my show, like disclosure for a lot of us has already kind of happened, and you don't have to look to government releases because there's so many testimonies from people about things that they've seen or been a part of. A lot of abductees who have a certain level of credibility and things like that. Like there's stories everywhere. and databases like MUFON that have like a ton of UFO footage and stuff that's way better than the things that the government is releasing, but people won't look there because it's not, an official source. So
Right.
for a lot of people, disclosures already happen. It's just increasing the number of people for whom disclosure has happened. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Darcy, I was going to
gonna
ask you what you
say-
thought.
Yeah, I would say that sprinkling disinformation files into the tranches, like tranche 1, tranche 2 releases, it serves this administration if they want to turn around and lean on Arrow to debunk everything, right? So they have two options, two strategies to move forward. They can see how the audience, like the public, reacts and say, okay, let's either validate and, continue to say we're not alone in the universe and we are being visited by some, higher intelligence or whatever. Maybe that's the disclosure route they'll go. Or they could turn around and say, yeah, our mistake. Most of this is just birds, balloons, and parachutes with flares on them. You know what I mean? So they have two options if they do it that way. And it would suck, but, we're dealing with an administration that's trying to win the favor of the public more than ever, right? Let's be honest, Trump's ratings are pretty low. And people wanted more about the Epstein files. They didn't really get that. And it's looking more and more like there's this real divide in the United States and a lot of different countries in the West, right? So they need something that wins the public back, and UFOs might be that thing, right? It might be something where the public turns around and says, okay, we trust you more for doing that, right? I think that's the strategy. So, and I'll take it because I've been part of this UFO community for decades now, and I'm really interested to see if we get to a place where this becomes normalized and it's not super taboo. Rob and I live in Canada. It's probably always going to be taboo here, but when we visit the United States, it'll feel like we're home. But yeah, I mean, there's that, and then disclosure itself, capital D disclosure, is supposed to come from the president. And we might get that. We might have this tranche 2, tranche 3, tranche 4 drop. You never know, right? How far this is going to go, how many files they're going to release. And then the president walks to a podium and says, oh, I can't believe it, but yeah, we're not alone in the universe, and I'm going to dance now. Who knows, right? So,
yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of the timing for it is unique because, as you mentioned, the Epstein files, like that's what a lot of people are still focused on. And it's like, all right, the aliens is cool, but yeah, we want the truth about the Epstein files, and so. I feel like if capital D disclosure was to happen, things are so polarized right now in the West that half of the population probably wouldn't believe it and the other half might. And I'm not sure it would really solve any problems because that's just the nature of the way things are. So many people disagree on so many things. So I don't know what it would take to get, if the actual truth does get out, to make everybody kind of believe it and all get on the same page.
Right. So you guys are both in Canada. So has these tranches being released changed like anything as far as media attention in Canada? Is it still like, is anyone talking about it or not?
I mean, I'm not a big news watcher per se, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what's going on the mainstream like network news in Canada, but I'm just not hearing people talk about it in public or in social settings. So yeah, I don't think it's having too much of an impact.
Right.
People are more excited about FIFA.
Right.
Or like the NHL playoffs right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Okay. I mean, it's the other thing is too, when it comes to disclosure, if the US is going to disclose, if Trump's going to come forward and say, hey, you know, the aliens, sorry, Darcy, I can't do an impression like you did. I'm not that good. Yours was pretty good. I can't do that. But if he were to come forward and say, hey, like, you know, there are aliens, what is that going to mean then for other countries? Because other countries have their own programs, supposedly, right? And maybe not all of them, but maybe some of the larger countries do. How do you think that's going to impact? Like, are all the other countries going to have to just like, well, we'll have to follow suit and just it's going to spill the beans everywhere? Or what do you guys think on that?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. And I think that there definitely probably would be some countries that do follow suit. And that might be what gets more people on board with it, seeing that, oh, okay, this isn't just the United States, because, you know, we're so focused on the information that the US has, and we often forget that there's other countries with their own programs and their own, you know, hordes of information and files and whatnot. And I'd love to hear more from these other countries, because, you know, it's frustrating sometimes dealing with the murkiness of the way things operate in the US, and Canada too. I mean, like, you know, I don't think we're that much better. We don't have that much more transparency really on this stuff. But yeah, to get other countries talking about it would probably help shift the needle a lot more than if the US just did it, you know, in isolation.
Right. Right. I know Japan had some conversations about it and had talked about working with the United States on it. And I think, I mean, we know China and Russia have their own covert programs going on. But you would think it would have to cause some type of tension or some type of like, Donald Trump would have to be aware that if he makes this move, it could cause problems X, Y, and Z with China or X, Y, and Z with Russia. Because we're talking about now weapon systems that could be created with UFO tech and a ton of stuff.
I think it's actually less of a problem internationally than you think. So France, for example, in 2007, March of 2007, released their 1,600 UFO files that were related to their airspace and their research for decades. You know, these files were registered since 1954 in their country. Brazil had their own UFO files release in 2025. So you can look up the Brazil Opens National UFO Archives. And their government made a statement. So Brazil's started in 1952, and they tracked these things till 2023. And their archive contains 893 sightings with pictures, videos, well, mostly pictures and reports. I don't think they release videos. So the United States is the leader here, and they've always been rumored to have captured craft, bodies, and been the bullies in the neighborhood to fly into other countries and retrieve that stuff because they were the most interested in being at the cutting edge of that information. So they wanted to hoard it. That's why I think if the United States breaks this, other countries might take a sigh of relief and be like, okay, the bullies have released their information. You know what I mean? No offense.
Right.
I mean, I love the United States and I love Americans, but in terms of this subject, that is the case. That it's been pretty rough. That the secrecy, the intimidation, all that jazz is mainly from the Pentagon, the intelligence agencies, and the military wings of the government that have been keeping a tight lid on this. So I think it wouldn't really bother other countries. Other countries are just waiting, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think you're probably right on that. Now that you explained it like that, I think you're probably spot on. I think too, when it comes to disclosure, you're going to have, you got to talk about religious implications and things like that. Do you guys think it's going to have an impact on religion as the way people anticipate, or do you think people are just going to kind of be fluid with it and be like, oh, okay?
Yeah, I think that people will probably just roll with it. Like, I don't see there being too much of an impact, and that's I've kind of changed my position on that over time. Like, I thought initially that religions would probably be severely impacted by this, but then after talking with more and more people about it, first of all, what better people to embrace, a universe full of different species than groups who believe in a supernatural entity as the basis of their entire religion. It's kind of like, it's not that far of a stretch, and if you believe in God, then you can believe that he's capable of making other civilizations outside of our planet. So I think that that kind of all tracks. I don't think religion would have too much trouble absorbing a reality like that. So I don't really see it as like too much of a risk to any religious institutions. It's more just like, as people's values might just change, realizing that there's so much else out there, and there might be like a little bit less focus on like materialism and stuff like that. Realizing there's much bigger things out there than us. Maybe buying a new car isn't the highest priority that I should have right now. And so maybe the economy will be affected in different ways. And I know that there's all kinds of concerns with like the technology associated with this, that it can disrupt industries, the energy sector, like all kinds of problems. So I feel like economically, there's probably more challenges associated with this than there are like socially or with religions.
Right. And I agree. And I think it shouldn't impact religion a lot. But I think, again, this comes down to, if there is disclosure, what narrative are they trying to push? Right. So, there are folks in the United States government, including the vice president, who believes this is demonic by nature. Right. So if they come forward and say, hey, there are demons flying spaceships and they're abducting us and they're blah, 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 that's going to cause a stir, and that's going to create havoc in a lot of different ways. Whether that's the real story or not the real story, if they spin that narrative, I think that could potentially, obviously, have a lot more uproar than there's other life in the universe, and they've stumbled across us and they've been visiting us.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm a bit concerned with. Like, I don't understand why they're throwing the word demons and angels out there in association with this. It does smell a bit fishy to me. I'm not sure what the agenda is there, because that would imply that they've got a lot more knowledge about this than they're letting on. And so, like, what is the real story there? There's clearly a whole lot being left unsaid when it comes to all this. And so, like, that's the problem that I still have. Like, there's so many people under NDAs who are unable to speak for various reasons, and like, it's so much hearsay online about like just people dropping little bits of information, but can't really confirm anything. There's no proof of anything, but then you're getting the Congress people talking about angels and demons, like, based on what, so that's one of the frustrating things. It's like the clarity of the information is murky. You're getting a lot of different narratives, and it's unclear what the motive is there. And maybe, maybe look on my show, I just spoke to an exorcist, and he he talks about angels and demons and stuff like that, but he draws a line. There's a conflation being made between a lot of these phenomena, which are not exactly the same thing. And so maybe that's part of it too. Maybe we have distinct phenomena happening that are being conflated with one another. I don't know, but that's what I'm hearing some people say.
So if they're going to say, hey, these things are demons, and they're going to blanket statement that, I mean, I don't know how does that affect other parts of phenomena like abductions? Does that mean people are being taken by demons onto like ships? Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I'm not sure how all that's going to play out. And I'm thinking way far ahead, but it's an odd dialogue to have.
I mean, there hasn't really been any overt acts of aggression on a large scale by UAP phenomena. So if they are being labeled as demons, they're pretty tame demons for not really doing much
Right.
to the general public. So like that's another reason why I don't buy it.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, it's an important thing to take note of because it's messaging, and at the end of the day, it is an ideology, political messaging, because that's a huge base. I've
Right.
talked about this before. There's 221 Christians in just the United States alone. That's a huge chunk of your population. So when you say things like that, when the president's mainstreaming the idea of UFOs and non-human intelligence, you're bringing them along with you. You're saying, we're not forgetting about you guys too. Here's how you can look at it. They're angels and demons. And that does worry me a bit because it could create some serious stigma, like that spiritual psychosis surrounding the others, whether they're good or bad. You start to think, well, they got it. If they are demons, they are bad, and if they're abducting people, maybe they're possessing them. It's like all of these things that will come along with that. I've had this guy who's a friend in the past narrate in my documentaries. His name's Tony. He runs the Confessionals podcast, and Tony is very Christian, right? He was part of that news drop that happened where pastors were meeting with an intelligence official. Remember when that was like becoming a big thing on Twitter
right.
and stuff like that? And he was one of the people that met with these pastors, with an intelligence official that was saying, disclosure is coming and they are angels and demons. And I love Tony. I think he's a great guy. And I really appreciate what he did in previous documentaries with me. But I will never look at this phenomenon, a nuts and bolts phenomenon where you see craft in the sky, you take pictures of it, videos of it, and there's reports by pilots and, every slice of life in between. Those are not demons or angels. Those are physical things that probably have occupants in the craft, or maybe they're being, flown by some kind of AI. That stuff is how I see it. And it's kind of disconcerting. I mean, like I said, it's messaging. I hope that that group doesn't get left out of the discussion. I want them to be part of it, but it's to me, it's not angels and demons. So it's just annoying that I talked to this guy, Reverend, like, I can't remember. He's got like a huge TikTok following, like 700,000, Bishop James something. And he's a Catholic. The whole demonology thing came from Catholicism. And when I asked him, do you view alien abductions or UFOs as demons or angels? He said, no, like that's just a separate thing. Sure, God could have created more than one intelligent life in the universe, but he said the purpose of a demon is to desecrate God's creation. And so what demons do, they don't fly ships, they are spirits. They invade a human body and they desecrate that body and they mutilate it and they make it sick and they defile, right? That's like their kind of mission and modus operandi. It's not to get into a flying saucer and fly over the Capitol. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's just two different things, but it's being blurred right now. And you listen to Matt Gaetz, he did a Twitter space recently, and he was talking about these mass events like the Ukraine war, or a tsunami event where big portions of the population are dying or going missing. And he was saying that he's been told that is when non-human intelligence take huge swaths of people and possibly, eat them or do strange things to them. And when somebody in that space asked him, who gave you this information? Was this in a skiff? He said, no, it was one of my constituents just walked into my office and gave me this and told me this. Like,
Right.
how are you qualifying that?
Right.
It's kind of lame that's part of the discussion. And to me, that proves Matt Gaetz knows shit all about this subject.
Exactly. Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Right. Darcy, I want to ask you another question, because you had a film that was about NASA, right, and kind of the cover up there. Some of these files that were released are NASA related, like files and some audio files of like people talking. What are your thoughts on those files, the NASA stuff?
Well, I mean, some of the stuff that they released has been in my documentary. So it was kind of weird getting a bit of validation when that stuff dropped in the first tranche. Specifically, what I saw were Apollo 12 photos where there were anomalies above the lunar surface in the sky, objects, right, which shouldn't be there if there are things flying around the moon while the astronauts are there. There's also transcripts from Frank Borman's bogey sighting during Gemini 7. And there's Apollo 17, Jack Schmitt, who was the third, there's three astronauts on each one of these missions, John Cernan. They all kind of have these UFO events that take place. And what Jack Schmitt talks about, there's actually an audio recording that they released where he's talking about all of these lights that are in space near their capsule when they're traveling to the moon. And John Cernan, who, wrote a book, Last Man on the Moon. He talks about when he saw lights above the lunar surface flashing when they were doing their moonwalks. And when he was sleeping on the moon, he saw what seemed like these lights coming into his head or at his head. So kind of like paranormal events. And I think that's pretty typical for space. I don't know if there's radiation out there that kind of messes with the human psyche, but I know that it was well reported during the X-15 missions, Mercury, Gemini, and all the Apollo manned missions, pretty much, except for 13, UFO sightings and pictures taken and video, DAC motion picture footage taken and released knowingly or unknowingly. And NASA's default all these years later is nothing to see here. There's no intelligent life out there except for us, and we don't have any UFOs in our files. I think that's bullshit.
Right. I 100% agree with that, man. I have some videos that I pulled up from the tranche, and I just want to play a couple videos and kind of get your input on them and your thoughts on them. So this video, this shows a UAP, which they labeled as erratic movement. That's what they called this file. So in this file, for the most part of this video, you can see this thing, it's just kind of flying straight right now. At some point in the video, I think it's closer to around here. All right, it's like buffering now, but so it's no longer flying straight. It starts making curves and twists and turns, changing speed and direction. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on this? To me, this is not a balloon, right? So
it's hard to say with a lot of these videos because they black out, the metadata, so you have no idea of exactly how fast things are moving. It's really hard to say, and for somebody who's not an expert, I wouldn't really know what to make of this because it's hard to know what the context is surrounding these, especially because they also didn't provide any sort of analysis. Like I think these files are all supposed to have been like, it's concluded it's inconclusive what we're seeing, but none of the analysis is included in any of them. So we don't know what was actually like spoken about or analyzed. Which makes it hard to kind of grasp what we're really looking at in some of these cases. And I think this is a good example. If, it appears that it's moving at a high velocity and making, erratic movements, which don't seem to be anything that conventional aircraft could do. But again, like we know so little of the context around it. It's almost impossible to say.
Right.
I'd say, like, there's elements of this video that remind me of Corbell's release of that, what looks like a disc in FLIR moving through a cloud. Mm-hmm. I think he did it on Weaponized or something months ago. Yeah. So, this kind of shows that characteristic. It's changing directions within a cloud. What one might note is that a cloud usually, a cumulus cloud, for example, usually has no wind passing through the middle of it, right?
Right.
And if an object is moving through a cloud like that, it's obviously operating independently from forces like wind. So that shows intelligent control. And that's interesting. You also have a strategic advantage to operate within a cloud, which many people of the UFO community past have said these things hide in clouds, right?
Right.
Because they're hidden in plain sight.
Right.
And with FLIR, you negate that because you're cutting through atmospheric conditions and you're looking at a heat signature in infrared. Especially these types of systems, like a Westcam system, are the types of forward-looking infrared that are on the F-18s, the Reaper drones, and stuff like that. And you're going to have reliable data. You're going to have a really high-quality camera system that's able to separate all the colors. It's black and white, and it's telling you this object that's emitting heat is of interest.
Right.
Pilot, track that. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's a good point. There's this other video which I'll pull up. Let me see. Give me 1 second here. And this video, the one with apparent instant acceleration. So I'll pull that one up. All right. So this was filmed in 2001 or 2021. So you can see that it's just flying, at whatever speed it is. And then at a certain point in the video, it appears like it just dramatically shoots off at really high rate of speed. And the drone loses track of it. It zooms out. It can't find it. What are your thoughts on that video, guys?
Yeah, I find that one to be, much more compelling than the previous video. Again, we have all of the information blacked out here, so it's hard to make any hard conclusions. But I was watching Richard Dolan's analysis of the second file dump, and this is one that he focused on. And yeah, I mean, this is much more impressive looking in my view, because even when you reduce the speed dramatically, you can still see that this object really took off very quickly. So yeah, there's definitely one of the more interesting videos that they released, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it would seem like the object is gone in a few frames, right? Which would be milliseconds, and it's off in space or beyond the clouds. So it is one of the better standout anomalous videos in the tranche, and I think a lot of people have focused on it. It also has the shape of a disc. So,
right.
That's a UFO that people have commonly reported in decades prior.
Yeah, that's very true. The shape of it does go along with typical UFO lore. There's another clip I'm going to pull up here, and this one, it starts tracking this little white ball. Let me see if I can find the part where it finds it. It's like a little white orb. All right, there we go. Okay, you see it there where my cursor is. It's a little white orb that it's tracking. And then at some point, I'll move it up along here. Okay, so when you look at it, there's one part in this video where, see, it goes into, that's a weird feature anywhere, that little round thing, but it goes into the shadow of this area, and then it's just gone. And they turn on the IR sensors to try to see better, but that orb or whatever it was is just gone, and they can't see it. It's somewhere in that shadow, presumably, but it goes into the shadow and then never comes back out.
Yeah, one of the other things that I noticed about these videos that are released that's actually impressive is the length of some of them. Like, I'm not sure how long this one is, but there's a couple that are like quite lengthy, 17 minutes long, I've seen. And so that's that's great because, initially we were getting very short clips and then, speculation about what happens before and after, but at least we're getting to see larger portions of these things being tracked. And so this is very cool. I'm not sure if this is the same video, but there was one where it seemed like an object went into some sort of like cavern or something, or like disappeared into a cave or whatnot. Could have been a different video, but similar to this one. Yeah, they just like disappear all of a sudden. Yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's strange. And when it's things like this one here, those ones, I have a hard time. Like it could be a balloon or something like that. But what are the chances that the balloon is going to be traveling at like a pretty constant rate and speed, and then when it hits a shadow, it just goes away? Like if it was a balloon, its behavior would be fairly consistent. Of course, there could be changes in wind directions, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just odd that as it approaches the shadow, it kind of comes to the cusp, the edge of the shadow, and then it seems like it backtrack into the shadow, and then it's just gone, and they can't find it anymore.
I will say my view, not to be a super contrarian of that video,
Right.
but when I looked at it, you could see that, first of all, it starts off in color, right? All of these camera systems have a color sensor, a FLIR sensor, a zoom in like 2 or 3 times, and then a wide. So they're pretty sophisticated in what they can do. It starts off in color, and in color, you can see the light that's shining on the landscape is coming from, the same direction. And whatever the object was being illuminated from the top by the same light source, the sun.
Right.
So it appears white, right? Because if you go back and look at the video, a lot of the hilltops and stuff appear white because it's a really sunny day. And then on top of that, the object casts its own shadow just before it goes into the shadow. So if you go back and look at it, you can look at the landscape underneath the object. The sun is shining on top, it's blocking the sun, and you see a little dark ball going along the terrain below it. So that is the shadow underneath the object, a sphere shadow.
Right.
Now, common thing when you've switched to FLIR to forward-looking infrared cameras to that video setting, when you're looking at a latex balloon, it will appear see-through. So literally, FLIR is not going to help you at all if you're trying to view a latex balloon, unless the air, for some reason, that you filled up this latex balloon with is very hot, right? Then the sensor is going to pick up something that is way hotter in the sky, and it'll show like a little ball. But because my thinking in this video is it is probably a balloon that they're tracking, when they switch to the FLIR version of the video, the FLIR system is not able to see a latex balloon, because if you go to Dave Falch's, if you just search Dave Falch on YouTube, he's a FLIR camera expert that actually repairs Westcam systems. He was in one of my documentaries, and he shows what a latex balloon looks like in a Westcam FLIR system. It just looks translucent.
Right.
So imagine the distance when it zoomed out and then switched to FLIR. There's no way it's going to be able to identify that balloon, right? It's just going to melt in with the landscape. I bet if they stayed on the color version for longer until it passed through the shadow, it would have picked it up again, because the sun would have seen the top of the object. But because it went into a shadow, it was also being blanketed by the shadow.
Right.
So it was hidden.
It's interesting though, because if you look, and I could try to, let me see, I could try to pull it back. Um, at the part where it comes to the cusp of the edge of the shadow here, let me see. So it comes to the edge of the shadow. It goes to that weird mound, and there's the shadow. It peeks out a little bit into the sunlight, and then it appears like it goes back. So it doesn't look like it goes forward. It looks like it goes into the sun and then backtracks into the shadow, and then it's gone. So that's what I was saying. If it's a balloon, I feel like it would just keep moving as opposed to like going into the sunlight and then backing out.
That's a good point. It just lagged at a certain point, so I didn't see the object stop and kind of like go back into the shadow. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is a UAP, and when it realized it was being tracked, it hid in
Right.
the shadow.
So I don't know. There's videos like that where there's just, because I get some of them are balloons, but it's just when there's a change in direction and sudden change in behavior, to me, that's kind of like, well, is that really a balloon? Because balloons are going to maintain a pretty constant behavior pattern. Unless, like I said, there's like drastic like change in wind speed or something like that. Otherwise, it's going to maintain its trajectory for the most part. But for it to suddenly just stop and conveniently stop in a shadow is just a little weird. So yeah, I don't know.
100%. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and Darcy, you said you had another video. Let me see if I can pull it.
Okay, so here's the submarina, and you'll see these like little white objects, little spheres that are flying around a Russian submarine. So apparently there's three. So one, two, and apparently they also exhibit transmedium capabilities because they were seen going in and out of the water. Um, there you go. You see it kind of like zooming in. Um, and that doesn't look like a bird. In a FLIR system, usually a bird, like that's a submarine, that's how it
Right.
looks. A bird will look like it's flapping its wings. It'll have an elongated shape. It won't look like a perfect white sphere, right? That was recorded, I think, in 2024. So that's a pretty good one. What do you guys think?
I was wondering if it was a bird because, there are some birds that dive bomb into the ocean. But after you explained that that's not how birds actually appear, yeah, then it's really interesting.
Yeah, especially if that was a nuclear submarine, because I know the the activity around nuclear installations has always been a thing that's been well documented. And so I spoke once with Tim Gallaudet, who was talking about exactly that, how nuclear subs, even diving deep underwater, have been followed by UAPs. There's been testimony of that too. So not surprising to see that here.
Rob, are you able to pull up yours and screen share yours?
Yeah, I can try to do that. So
I can
the
pull
one,
it up if you want.
do you know which one it is, Darcy? It's
It's the link you just shared here.
yeah. They say that
Which is I got it.
yeah.
Here we go. Ready?
They're saying that this looks like a humanoid shape. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, this is the one that they're saying looks like a humanoid shape, and very close to something that was filmed over Sequoia National Park in 2015. And this one, yeah, it just looks odd. This is one of those strange and more like uncanny looking ones that, it's hard to wrap your head around. Although I have seen some interesting debunks of it. People saying that this is like, some sort of like blow up, balloon figure that's been
A
partially
storm,
deflated.
the stormtrooper.
Yeah,
Right.
people making comparisons to that, and it's I don't know. This is one of the things that frustrates me though, because if somebody on the internet could come up with that, then how could the United States Pentagon not draw some sort of conclusion about it, and it ends up in this release? That's one of those weird inconsistencies that it's hard to kind of make heads or tails around, but it is a interesting looking video for sure.
It is odd because it does look humanoid. I mean, you could see what looks like an arm and maybe a leg attached to it. I mean, obviously, it'd be weird if it was like a humanoid like entity or something like floating in the sky. But I don't know. It's weird because, like you said, you would think the DoD would have some type of, I don't know, awareness of what this could have been. It shouldn't be in the files and being debunked by just random folks on the internet.
Yeah.
For me, like, it certainly seems like a balloon because even its movements are not like if this was a jetpack man or an alien that was propelling itself through the sky, he looks pretty dumb. Like he's just doing a circle with the wind,
Right.
which is what you would expect from a balloon that's
Right.
caught one of its appendages and is spinning it around. And if you do like kind of go pause it frame by frame, when it's at like this angle, pretty soon after, like this is its leg pointing down, this is one of its arms,
Right.
stormtrooper head here. You kind of see one of the legs is kicked up and is probably why it's spinning around because the wind has caught it, right? Like right
Right.
around there you kind of
Yeah.
see.
So does this speak to you as one of those potential disinformation inclusions?
To me, it does, yeah. I mean, it just seems like they're kind of throwing everything they can out there to have everybody excited to review and to talk about because it's more important for them for us to be distracted about this than
Right.
the Iran war and gas prices going up and groceries and everything else. Hey, look, it's a floating stormtrooper.
Yeah, I mean that's true. It's weird though because I don't know. Like, I mean, it probably likely could be a balloon, but I don't even really remember. How often do you see balloons that are full figures? Like, it's a weird. It's a weird
Yeah, I
product.
mean, I looked it up when I saw people debunking that it was a
Uh huh.
humanoid balloon. And I don't know where this one was recorded, but in Mexico, there are so many, there are party balloons galore. And, you know, people throw gender reveals, they throw Christmas parties, they throw you name it, like coming out parties. And they'll have flying dicks and numbers and
Right.
flying humanoids, at the party. And sooner or later, one of those gets, taken off by the wind and is sky high. And somebody's recording it with their phone, and that gets somehow added to the Dow UAP tranche release. You know what I mean? So if we had the metadata that came with this, maybe we could say, all right, this alien looks kind of funny doing just a circle in the sky, but it's an alien for sure. But we don't have that metadata. So to me, it just looks like a balloon
Right.
rotating with the wind.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about like, remember when I can't even remember what they're called right now, Skywatcher, Jake Barber's thing, and they were doing all these different classifications and different shapes of UAP, and there was so many different shapes and There's like the jellyfish and all that weird thing. This is just like another like super bizarro shape. Like if it is some type of craft, like I don't know, it's just a very odd form or shape of a craft, and like what function would that like a craft like that even serve? It's weird. I don't know. Like even when you look at all the ones that like Jake Barber, like they had like the jellyfish type UAP that they saw. Like what? Like if you look at our aircraft, all our aircraft are designed with a certain form and function in mind, right? And they're designed like to be aerodynamic, or they're designed to do this, or designed to do that. Like what function does a jellyfish shaped craft have? Like you would think it would have to have some type of function, but like that shape serves no apparent purpose, at least to us. So it's really interesting. It's odd.
Maybe like a birthday kid really likes sea life, and they got the jellyfish balloon, right?
Jellyfish balloons out there.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of sightings of orbs too, which people kind of classify differently from what they deem to be craft. And so, you know, there may be different categories of things. Not sure, you know, people have speculated that some of them could be, you know, entities too, as opposed to craft. Who knows? I mean,
right.
I don't necessarily think that's likely in many cases, but you know, anything's possible. So I think you just have to keep an open mind and try not to frame things in terms of the way human vehicles are classified, because there could be a lot of different possibilities that we're not even aware of.
Right. Yeah, good point. All right, guys, before we wrap this up, I want to get your guys' opinion on what are you hoping for going forward if we continue these file releases? What are you hoping for, and what do you think we are actually going to get? Where do you see this leading?
Well, I mean, what I'm hoping for, what I think everybody is hoping for, is just that open admission from the President of the United States that we're not alone, and we've known about it for a long time. It would be great to get a reveal of the non-human biologics that have been talked about by Dave Grush. You know, if they are indeed keeping those bodies, it'd be great to actually see them. You know, get some solid information about what they are, what we know about them, how they were recovered. You know, all of that information that people have been speculating about for so long, but we've never really heard anything about it from official sources. So like that would be, I think, like the holy grail right there. But do I think that's going to happen? No. I think we'll probably get a lot more releases like the ones that we've been seeing. Interesting stuff, but probably a lot of stuff that can be debunked and kind of continues to muddy the waters a little bit. I do find it interesting how in, you know, Hollywood, we're getting films like Disclosure Day coming out this year, Steven Spielberg, huge film. I think, you know, my theory is that there is probably a very long-term plan to desensitize people to this. And so I wouldn't expect anything dramatic to be released this year, but I do think that probably over the next few years, maybe the next 5 to 10, that we'll start to get just some enough desensitization that people start to kind of like generally accept without getting that big shocking omission, you know, from the president. I don't know if they really want to go down that road. It might just be kind of like that slow burn thing where eventually everybody will kind of agree without having to have a major event to kind of convince everyone.
Right. Right. Yeah. Good point. Darcy?
I think I agree with what Rob said, that those would be great things to happen. But on top of that, if the president announces we're not alone, we've known for a while, you know, certain institutions were part of the cover-up. Afterwards, I would hope that they finally allow whistleblowers to be properly protected, because this is something that's highly contested and discussed within the community. People like Dylan Borland and all these other whistleblowers who have come forward want to say more, but they're, under threat of reprisal, death, harassment, you name it,
Right.
from the powers that be that say you're not allowed to talk. If there was a proper whistleblower law passed after a disclosure happens, then these people can talk to what they know, speak to what they know, and maybe they do it in a secure setting, but they don't have to worry about getting, killed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, great point. And I think that's kind of really what needs to happen. I think a lot of these folks need to be excused of their NDAs so they can say what they need to say without having to worry about being murdered or suicided. It's unfortunate, but yeah, that's unfortunately the way that they're treated. And yeah, I think if we can be in a lot better place, we'd be in a lot different place, I think, right now, if these folks weren't being threatened constantly whenever they need to, whenever they have stuff to say about the subject. But anyway, we'll wrap this up, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about this with me. We'll definitely keep eyes out for more file releases. And maybe down the line we can link up again and talk about anything other big news related to the subject. But guys, thank you, Rob, Darcy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Glad to be here.